Hey everyone, TFBTV correspondent and semi-professional hand model James Reeves here today on a very special edition of TFBTV where we go over Glock's new pistol. Before we do that, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. So the Generation 1 Glock was introduced in 1982. In 1988, the Gen 2 Glock was introduced, which brought most noticeably a revised frame that had checkering on the front and back strap. There were a number of minor mechanical upgrades as well. In 1998, the Generation 3 Glock pistol was introduced. It added, most significantly, finger grooves and scalloped thumb rests, and also an accessory rail. And there were what some people call Generation 3.5 pistols, the RTF2s, which use the rough texture finish version 2. Then in 2010, the Glock Generation 4 was introduced, and the improvements in the Gen 4 Glocks were seen as recoil mitigation measures. While the 4 and the 3 share a common silhouette, you can see that the texturing on the 4 varies drastically from the texturing on the Gen 3. The Gen 4 also added, as many of us know, interchangeable back straps, and it actually slimmed down the grip a little bit. As you see here, the Gen 4 also has a larger magazine release that is reversible for ambidextrous use. And the Gen 4s also introduced the double recoil spring system versus the single recoil spring system as seen in the Gen 3 Glock. According to Glock, this was a measure to reduce felt recoil with the Gen 4 guns. Now, most of you guys are pretty smart, so I think you know where this is going. And here on TFB TV, we're proud to introduce the Glock Generation 5. Now, before we discuss what's different with the Generation 5 from the Generation 4, let's talk about why Glock modified the Generation 4 gun. Now, those of you who are acquainted with the modular handgun selection process, one of the critical factors in the tests was reliability, and there was something that they called mean rounds between stoppages. There's a requirement that the MHS pistol go 12,500 rounds, averaging no more than one stoppage every 2,000 rounds. According to Glock, the only two pistols that passed that portion of the test were the Glock and the SIG P320. Both of them could go over 2,000 rounds in between stoppages for 12,500 rounds. As we all know, SIG was awarded the MHS contract. It was around this time that Glock decided to move forward with some modifications, and according to Glock, the Generation 5 Glock can go better than 30,000 rounds of the MHS test with a better rate than 2,000 mean rounds between stoppages. There's no other way to say it. This is the most reliable Glock that's ever been produced.
Some of you follow me in social media and you've seen that I've spent some time with these Glocks at Glock's headquarters in Smyrna, Georgia. You'll also see a bunch of clips throughout this video of me and some other guys shooting. All of us are using the Gen 5 Glocks at the Glock Operator Course in Smyrna. Pete and I absolutely ran these things into the ground when we were at Smyrna. I shot at least a case and a half worth of ammo through mine. There were about 10 or 11 other riders there. They all fired probably a case each, and I didn't see any mechanically induced jams the entire time I was there. So that does tend to reinforce Glock's theory that these are the most reliable Glocks ever produced.
In addition to modifications to increase reliability, Glock made 5 major changes to the pistol itself. It retained the reversible larger magazine release from the Gen 4 and the interchangeable back straps, but it added, as you can see here, an ambidextrous slide release. Change number 2, obviously, finger grooves removed. From this angle, the Generation 5 gun and the Generation 2 gun look almost identical, and they said that this was in response to consumer feedback. So Glock is out there listening to you guys. Now, while these two guns look the same from this angle, have a look at that. As you can see, the Generation 5 Glock has a slightly beveled and slightly flared magazine well to make magazine changes easier. And you can compare that to all the generations of Glock right there. So that's change number 3. Change number 4, Glock refers to as the Marksman barrel. Glock's engineers say that this barrel can do better than 4-inch groups at 50 yards. And finally, perhaps what I think to be the most important modification, other than the reliability increases, of course, is Glock's new NDLC finish. Again, speaking with Glock engineers at Glock Headquarters, they said that this is basically an ion bonded finish over the typical Tenifer finish that you saw from the other pistols, and this modification is only going to be seen on the Generation 5 guns. It's pretty easy to see here how much darker the Gen 5 finish is from the other generations of Glock. Now, as you also see, you've got the Gen 2 and Gen 3 slides over here. The Gen 5 gun also has the dual recoil spring system used in the Gen 4 guns. And this may or may not have anything to do with the increased reliability, but Glock went back to a 2-pin system on the Generation 5 guns, similar to the Generation 2 guns. I don't know what bearing that has on reliability. Less parts is always more, I guess. And the Gen 5 guns only have 35 parts. The models Glock sent me have Ameriglow contrast night sights. Those will be available from the factory. Also, the traditional Glock plastic sights will be available, as well as steel iron sights. Also worth noting, the Generation 5 magazines have high visibility followers, helping you identify how many rounds you have left. Gen 5s retain magazine compatibility with all the other generations of Glock, and for that matter, the Generation 5 guns should also be compatible with most, if not all, holsters. Now, another improvement that isn't really discussed in Glock's materials, the Gen 5 has a beveled slide edge towards the muzzle, which should make the gun a little bit slicker and easier to holster. So there's your Glock 17, your Gen 5 Glock 17 next to your Gen 5 Glock 19. Maybe one of the best things about these guns is when you drop them, they won't go off, thanks to Glock's 3 patented safety mechanisms built into the pistol. The weight of the Glock 19 is 21.5 ounces. The weight of the Glock 17 is 22.26 ounces. The 17 has an overall length of 7.95 inches and 7.28 inches of overall length for the 19. The width is 1.34 inches for the Glock 17 and 1.34 inches for the Glock 19. So in conclusion, guys, I know everybody probably wanted something super cool like the Glock carbine or hell, even the Glock 1911. But to me, this is cool. This is taking one of the most reliable handguns ever created, making it somehow even more reliable than it was. I got to shoot probably 2 cases of ammo through one at Glock. I went to the Glock Operator event. I don't know how many cases of ammo, somewhere between 15 and maybe 25 cases of ammo were run in that course, and I did not see any gun-induced stoppages, and frankly, that was impressive. We didn't clean or lube these guns the entire time. We used the same guns and just ran the hell out of them, and they kept going and going. So again, this might not be too exciting to most people, but to me, I think this is one of the best Glock generational improvements of all time. You're taking the traditionally reliable Glock, making it more reliable. They're listening to consumers and omitting the finger grooves that some people didn't like. You have an even better finish than the Tenifer finish, if you can imagine that. You have several more sight options from the factory, an ambidextrous slide stop, the larger magazine release, the flared magwell, which is another huge improvement in terms of performance, and some slight improvements to the magazine. How can you improve what Glock refers to as perfection? In my opinion, Glock did it in 2017, and I'm really interested to see what Glock does with this pistol in the future. In any event, thank you so much to Glock for letting TFB come to Glock Headquarters, shoot their new pistols, ask them questions, and just generally fanboy out, harass all of the staff there. Thank you to our sponsors, Ventura Munitions and ProxyBid, and I'll see you guys later. It's kind of a weird wave. How do you do that backwards? Bye, guys.